Right then, so this should be working. So let's have a look and see if we're on. 3, there we go. So we are now streaming. It's the first live one we've done for a long time. So the reason for this one is to try and see exactly what we need to do. So those of you watching it later, then fantastic. Some of you are going to be watching it right now, so even better. So people in the chat, when you eventually get here, that'll be fantastical. So we know that AQA have sent some information about what's going to be in the exam, the topics that are strongly going to be in there, but not all and everything. So what I'm going to take you through very, very quickly is some of the paper 1 topics that you are going to need to understand. So the first thing that we know is that there is going to be this major focus in certain areas. So for this one and the human body, we know that there's going to be something asked about the structure and functions of the musculoskeletal system. So basically how the major movements are going to happen, how muscles and the bones work together, how antagonistic pairs work, how the muscles basically work to pull the skeleton into position, and about the major joints. So what we've got in front of us there is a bit of information that hopefully should be able to assist you in your exam. So one of the things that you are going to absolutely need to know and understand is that muscles work in antagonistic pairs. Now I'm sure that lots and lots of you know this, it's not an issue, but essentially we're saying here that we have a set of muscles that as one of them is working, the other one relaxes. So in every single movement that we do, that's essentially what is going on. So within the information you can see on the screen at the moment, you can see that we're talking about this idea that we have an agonist and an antagonist. So if I was to take you through, let's say, flexion at the elbow, we have a muscle which is the prime mover, the one that is doing all of the pulling on the tendon to then move the bone, because that's basically how we work, that muscles pull on tendons which then articulate the bones, because movement actually happens at the joint. So we work in antagonistic pairs. So the agonist is the one that is doing the work. It's under agony, it's under tension. The antagonist is the one which is lengthening. So the pairs we've got here, we've got the bicep, which is working, it's the one that's the agonist. We've got the tricep, which is then relaxing and lengthening, which is the antagonist. So what you need to sort of understand is that in different joints, we have these muscles that work in these pairs we call antagonistic pairs. So some of the things that you maybe get a bit confused about along the way might be things around what the pairs actually are. So we have the bicep and the tricep, we have the quadriceps and the hamstrings. So they're the sort of ones that mainly you need to know. So a couple of questions already in the chat, which is great. So muscles can only pull, right? Absolutely. So muscles cannot push, they can only pull, and they pull on bones via tendons. So basically we have the muscle, the tendon, then the bone. The muscles are pulling on the tendon to then create the movement. So these antagonistic pairs are definitely going to be around, going to be coming up. It could be in lots and lots of different types of questions. So you may get something saying that during the upward phase of a bicep curl, which muscle is the agonist, which muscle is the antagonist. So it could be as simple as that. Now, you will definitely get asked something around these topics. So you will definitely be asked things that might be assisted around how joints move, how muscles create movement at a joint. So we talk about antagonistic pairs, we talk about the muscle pulling on the tendon and then the movement taking place at the joint. You may be asked within there something about muscular contraction. Now this is something that my students can find a little bit difficult. So here we're talking about, we've got isometric and isotonic contractions. So isotonic contractions are those that result in some sort of movement. So that might be flexion, it might be extension, it might be running, it might be something really, really elaborate. Isometric contractions, however, is when there's no movement taking place. So something like holding a balance in gymnastics, in netball, when you're guarding so that you are defending and you don't overbalance, that you hold a position, so therefore you can not move. So anytime there is movement taking place, then it's not an isometric movement. So some of the things within there that you then need to understand are concentric and eccentric contractions. So when we talk about isotonic movement, then we're looking at things being concentric in their contraction. So concentric contractions are when the muscle shortens and then contraction occurs. Eccentric contractions, however, is when the muscle lengthens during contraction. And this is mainly the downward phase of things. So if you think about the downward phase of a bicep curl, the downward phase of a press up, the contraction that's actually taking place is what we call eccentric, because it's under tension and the muscle is actually lengthening. So if you ever see anyone in the gym and they're doing a movement very, very slowly on the way down, it's basically trying to work that eccentric component. So we've got a few people that have joined. Again, maybe this is just a test of my equipment, but I'll sort of do a quick little bit. If there's anything anyone wants to say in the chat, just stick it in there, guys. See how you guys are getting on. If there are any quick questions that you want me to answer, then we can do that along the way. So the next aspect that we're going to look at very, very quickly is this. So we know that you're going to be asked something around the blood vessels. So there are three types of blood vessels. We have arteries, we have veins, and we have capillaries. Now, the things that you guys need to understand is how we get blood going through these, how the structure and the function of each of these different blood vessels actually is going on, basically. So what we need to understand first of all is the direction of blood. So arteries always take blood away from the heart. Veins bring blood back towards the heart. So that's one of the first things that you need to understand, and that will help you massively if you get a question on the heart, because as soon as you see an artery, you should think about going away, veins visit, so veins come back. So as you can see in the diagram there, we've got arteries which have thick muscular walls. Okay, these thick walls are also really elastic, and the reason for that is that the artery has really, really high pressures of blood going through, because if you think about your heart pumping, the blood is shooting through those arteries as it leaves the heart. So that's why they are like they are. They have a small lumen, so what that means is the circly bit, essentially, the internal diameter of the artery is actually quite small, and it's able to carry blood at really, really high pressure. So what that means is that essentially it's generally carrying oxygenated blood away from the heart, except in the pulmonary artery, because that's actually going back towards the heart after we've had blood which has been deoxygenated. So that's something that you absolutely need to understand. You need to then understand about veins. So the fact that we have veins which have thin walls, so they've got this really big muscular wall, and they've got a really large lumen. So the internal diameter is a lot larger on a vein than it is in an artery. And these carry blood at much, much lower pressures, so they don't need to be flexible, they don't need to be stretchy like we have in an artery. Now, veins contain valves, and the reason for that is that it prevents backflow. So because they've not got the blood being pushed through at really, really high pressure, the risk is that blood will go back the wrong way, essentially. So they have valves that close that then stop the blood going back in the direction we don't want it to go. Veins mainly carry deoxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary vein, and it's just understanding that sort of process that veins generally go back towards the heart, arteries go away from the heart. We've then got capillaries. Now capillaries are really, really important, and you'll hear about them mainly for you guys at GCSE PE when we talk about gaseous exchange. So they have really, really thin walls. They're only actually 1 cell thick, so if you think of it being incredibly, incredibly thin, it allows things to pass through. Gas for us would be the key thing. They've got a really small lumen because they're really, really tiny. They also then link the arteries and the veins. So the way that it can get across from an artery to a vein is via a capillary. So when we look at gaseous exchange, when you do about the cardiorespiratory system, then the capillaries are really, really key, because it's how we get air from the environment into the bloodstream is via the capillaries. So that's really, really key for us. The other thing, and again, this is what my students really struggle with, is that we have this thing of redistribution of blood. So let's say that you're exercising and you're doing some squats in the gym. Your quadriceps, your hamstrings, your glutes are going to need a lot of oxygen, and they're going to need a lot of blood. So what happens is that blood is redistributed towards those areas, and the way it does it is that we have something called vasoconstriction and then vasodilation. So vasodilation basically means that the blood vessels are going to dilate, so get bigger, okay, they're going to get wider to allow more blood to pass through and go to the area that needs to go to. Vasoconstriction, however, means that the blood vessels are actually going to constrict, so they get smaller, they get narrower, which restricts blood flow. So let's imagine that you are cold, for instance. Okay, we want to get blood towards places, the extremities, to keep yourselves warm. When we're very, very hot, we want blood to go towards our skin so we can lose heat. When you're digesting food, we want the blood to go towards the digestive system so we can digest food. So all these things are happening all the time in our bodies, which is going to promote blood flow in a certain area, restrict blood flow in another area. And that is through vasodilation and vasoconstriction. So dilation, the area gets a lot larger, more blood can pass through. Constriction, the area gets smaller, and it basically means that less blood can get through. So let's have a look in the chat. Is there anything else? Not at the moment. Again, if you're not watching this live, it's something that we're going to be doing up towards the exams, getting more of these live things going on. Today is merely a test of my equipment. So in the chat, guys, if anyone can tell me about the sound quality, about what you're seeing, give us a chance to go through there. So I'm just going to move me out the way on this one, because I've just seen that my big head is in the way on this one, so you can't actually see about vasodilation. So if I just shift me up there and then do a transition, bosh, there you go, I'm now in a better place. So you'll be able to see that, that diagram there much better about vasodilation. So any questions in the chat, guys, stick them on there as you go. Now, one of the things that is quite funny when you do these streams is that you can put different lags in. You can put a bit of an aspect in there which is going to show a bit of a hello dog, a bit of a delay. So sometimes the things that I'm seeing on my screen are a little bit behind from what you are seeing. So the dog's just arrived to come see me because she's a bit lonely, bless her. So there you go. Right, the next one we're going to look at this evening is going to be on the mechanics of breathing. Now we know for a fact that this is going to be in the exam. So we know that in the exam this is definitely going to be a topic that's going to come up in some sort of form. So again, if I just transition myself that way. So we have two methods of breathing basically. We breathe in, we breathe out. I know it sounds mental, but we do. So you guys need to all understand when we talk about inspiration, how that happens and how expiration happens. So there are two main muscles that you need to understand about. So we have the diaphragm, which is the one that you'll see in the diagram that sits just below the lungs and goes from being curved to being flat. And we have the intercostal muscles, which sit just in between the ribs, which actually enable you to move your rib cage up and out and actually be able to then breathe. So within the mechanics of breathing, you need to understand how those muscles contract during inspiration and how they relax during expiration. Because basically if I breathe in, I consciously have to think about it because my muscles have to contract. Whereas when you breathe out, when you expire, it's a passive process that basically everything relaxes. So that's one of the things to think about, that everything contracts in inspiration, everything relaxes in expiration. So how does it work? Basically, when I breathe in, my rib cage is going to go up and out. Okay, so you'll see in the diagram about how that actually works. So we've got this idea of the rib cage that's going to be expanding to move up and out. We've then got the opposite that happens during expiration. So as you are exercising, you will see that happens more forcefully. That we have a stronger contraction of the muscles. We have more force of the muscles that happens that's going to make the rib cage go up and out as we exercise. The diaphragm goes from being a curve shape to when it contracts becoming flat. And what that does is it actually creates more space, essentially, that enables the pressure to change within the body. So we want pressure going from, so air rushing from out the body, from into the body, from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure. So that's basically something that happens when we breathe. I say in expiration, it is the opposite. So basically we go from it being in a flat position to being curved, and the rib cage moves down and in, so therefore think about the amount of space actually reduces. That affects pressure. You're also going to be asked to look at a spirometry trace, which you can see in the diagram just here, and I've just done a video on that as well. So tidal volume basically is your normal breath in and out. You'll see it going like this. You then got a really, really big intake of air that is possible, which is then your inspiratory reserve volume. You've then got a very big push out of air after tidal volume, which is your expiratory reserve volume. And then you've got a bit of air always left over, which is what we call residual volume. Okay, so a couple of really, really simple topics there, and that's where we are. So as I say, today is just a quick test, guys. It's something that I'm going to be doing regularly. I'll schedule them so you know when they're going on, and then you guys can all try and be involved in the process and in the revision sessions as we go. And I can get it from you guys. You can tell me the things that you need to know, and then we can do that way. So not too long now before the exams start, so we better get revising. Check out my videos, check out all the different things, and subscribe to the channel, guys, so you don't miss any content going forward, because that would be awful. Cheers, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.